12 invisible tripwires. Every elite dinner. You just failed one without knowing you took a test. Not the clothes, not the watch, not the car. 9 specific scenes where billionaires quietly vet every human who walks in the room. The tripwire that costs you the most arrives at minute 14. Meet Daniel. Tuesday night. Tribeca townhouse. 8 people at the table. He is the only one who does not belong. He knows it in the first second he sits down. Start above a certain level of wealth, roughly $10 million and up. There is a second social layer most people never see. It operates by rules nobody teaches and nobody writes down. It does not test what you own. It does not test who you know on paper. It does not test your degree, your title, or the restaurant you name drop. It tests something much harder to fake. It tests how quiet you are. It tests who you are loyal to when nobody is looking. It tests whether you understand the difference between being admitted to a room and being trusted inside it. Most people reading this will spend a lifetime at the edge of this filter, scrolling past its signals without ever noticing them. A glance held a beat too long. A question framed strangely. A small favor that does not feel small. An invitation that arrives without subject line. This video is the manual nobody hands you. By the end of tonight, you will recognize the 12 specific tripwires the highest net worth people in your city use to vet outsiders in real time, and why the door almost always closes before you realize it was open. Here is the first thing to understand. The filter is not a cabal. It is not a conspiracy. It is not a secret handshake. It is something simpler, quieter, and much more effective. It is a pattern of observable micro-decisions, repeated across thousands of independent dinners and phone calls and introductions, all converging on the same question. Is this person a liability, or is this person an asset? Liability here does not mean poor. Liability means someone who leaks, someone who asks for too much, too fast, someone who repeats what they hear, someone who treats the invitation as a destination instead of a doorway. And the cruel genius of the system is this. It does not announce itself. It has no membership office. It has no rejection letter. It simply stops inviting you. You ghost out of the calendar. You assume you were just busy. You were not busy. You were filtered. The first rule of the filter, written nowhere, enforced everywhere. You will never be told you are being tested. That is the point. If they tell you, you can prepare. If they tell you, you can perform. If they tell you, the signal is worthless. So the test must feel like an ordinary conversation. It must feel like ordinary generosity. It must feel like an ordinary favor. Every tripwire we are about to walk through is disguised as normal social life. That is exactly why it works. By the time you recognize the test was happening, the result is already in a shared signal thread between 4 people you will never meet. The decision has been made. Your name has moved from one list to another, and you were never in the room for it. Tripwire 1, the discretion probe. Early in the evening, a guest, usually not the host, casually drops a name in conversation. A senator, a hedge fund principal, a CEO mid-divorce. They say the name the way you say the name of a restaurant you once liked. Casual, unremarkable, and they watch your face for the microsecond of recognition. If you light up, even slightly, if you lean in, if you say the words, "I actually know him," you just failed. You failed because you volunteered a connection. You had no reason to volunteer. You failed because you treated proximity to a name as social currency. In this room, proximity is the one thing everybody already has. Volunteering it marks you. You become the person who trades on names. The correct response is the neutral nod, the small yes, the continuation of the conversation, one beat later on a different subject. You do not confirm. You do not deny. You do not collect. That is discretion. And discretion, above $10 million, is the first language. Tripwire 2, the silence audit. 3 weeks after the dinner, someone you have just met on a second occasion, in a completely different setting, asks you a casual question. So what did Marcus say about the Singapore deal? You have never spoken publicly about the Singapore deal. You did overhear Marcus talking about it at the Tribeca dinner, briefly, in a side conversation you were not part of. The asker already knows the answer. That is not why they are asking. They are checking if you will repeat it. If you say anything substantive, even one fragment, you are finished. Not because you violated a formal contract. There was none. Because you demonstrated that overheard information exits your mouth. That single demonstration is enough. The correct move is, I have no idea what you're talking about, delivered flat, no hesitation, no defensive smile. Then a redirect. The people at this level do not care whether you are honest in the ordinary sense. They care whether what enters your ear stays in your head. Quiet loyalty is not a feeling. It is an operational capability. And it is one of the few things in life that cannot be bought, only observed. Tripwire 3. The strategic favor. A man you barely know calls you on a Saturday morning. Hey, I know this is weird. My nephew is applying to a school and needs a letter. You know the dean. Could you maybe? You are being offered a small social debt. A favor you can grant with one email. The trap is not in doing the favor. The trap is in the next 48 hours. If within 2 days you find a polite way to remind the asker that you did the favor, even subtly, even just mentioning the dean in another message, you just failed. You failed because you treated the favor as an asset to be banked. The correct move is to do the favor cleanly and then never bring up again. Not once. The favor must cost you nothing to remember. The people at this level are testing whether you understand a basic principle. Social debt quietly recorded is a tool. Social debt announced is a liability. If you cannot forget your own generosity, you cannot be trusted with theirs. Tripwire 4. The utility audit. You are introduced to someone at a fundraiser. They ask, politely, what brings you here? The wrong answer is any version of, my friend invited me. The wrong answer is any version of, I am curious about the cause. Both answers label you as a consumer of the room. The filter separates consumers of the room from contributors to the room. Contributors bring something, a perspective, a deal flow, a technical capability, an introduction, a real commitment, not a photo opportunity. The correct answer is short, precise, and slightly strange. I am looking for someone working on rare disease pediatric trial design. Do you know anyone? Or, I am writing a private memo on agricultural water rights, and I wanted to listen tonight. You have just declared yourself a contributor. Whether you succeed at the task or not is secondary. What matters is that in the first 30 seconds, you told them you are a net giver to the room, not a net taker. The takers are politely steered toward the shrimp cocktail and not re-invited. Tripwire 5. The spouse test. You are invited to a small dinner at the principal's home. The principal, whom you are trying to build a relationship with, speaks to you for perhaps 10 minutes the entire evening. The rest of the time you are seated next to principal's wife, Eleanor. She asks about your reading. She asks a polite question about your children. She is warm. She is unhurried. She is also, whether you realize it or not, the final gatekeeper. In most high net worth households, the spouse has a veto nobody talks about. If Eleanor decides you are unserious or boastful or too interested in her husband's capital, the principal will politely not return your next email. The correct move is simple and almost nobody executes it. You treat Eleanor exactly the way you would treat the principal. Same eye contact, same attention, same care of language, same respect for her intelligence. You resist every instinct to glance past her toward the principal. You do not perform for him through her. She notices. She always notices. The failure mode is identifying who holds the money and directing all social effort toward that person. The correct read is that at this level, influence almost never lives where you think it lives. Tripwire 6. The staff test. Same dinner, later. A server refills your wine glass. You say thank you, or you do not. Whether you do is observed. More importantly, how you treat the valet when your car is 15 minutes late is observed. Whether you use the house manager's first name correctly after hearing it once is observed. Whether you text your assistant in a tone you would not use out loud is observed, because at some point your assistant will cross paths with their assistant, and that loop always closes. The principle here is clinical, and it is the single most common disqualifier among people who should have made the cut. How a person treats those with no power to retaliate is the most reliable available data about their future behavior toward anyone else. The filter uses that data ruthlessly. There's a man named Henry. a family office CIO, who has closed 2 introductions in his life based on how the candidate addressed a waiter at an airport lounge. He was right both times. He will tell you he does not even do it consciously anymore. It is pattern recognition that is calcified into instinct. Tripwire 7. The 2 a.m. inconvenience. 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, months after dinner, a message arrives. Hey, I know this is late. Do you happen to know a discreet attorney in Miami who handles trusts? It is a small ask. It is also a tripwire with 3 prongs. First, you are being tested on your network depth. Second, you are being tested on your willingness to activate that network at a moment of inconvenience. Third, and most subtly, you are being tested on your editorial judgment. If you respond immediately with 5 names, you are eager. If you respond immediately with 0, you are unconnected or unhelpful. The correct move is 1 name, the best one, delivered inside 20 minutes, with 1 sentence of calibration. I know Tribeca Okonjo. She handles this well. Here is her direct email. Tell her I sent you. No small talk around the ask. No performative concern. No gushing. You solved the specific problem asked with the highest quality single answer, fast, and did not make it about you. That is the exact shape of elite utility. It is why they asked you at 11 p.m. Because how a person answers at 11 p.m. when they think nobody is watching reveals everything. Tripwire 8. The gift trap. A package arrives. Unannounced. A bottle of 1954 Armagnac in a lacquerwood box, or a hardcover first edition of a book you mentioned in passing 3 weeks ago, or a private viewing invitation to a Rothko held at a warehouse you are not supposed to know exists. The gift is not generosity. It is a test of whether you can recognize scale. If you respond with a too large gift in return, you just announce that you interpret the relationship as transactional. You failed. If you respond with a too small, performative thank you, you signal that you did not understand the gesture. You also failed. The correct response, and almost nobody executes this correctly, is a handwritten note, 1 paragraph, delivered by messenger within 72 hours, acknowledging the specific detail that makes the gift meaningful, followed by silence. No return gift. No public mention. No social media photograph. Ever. The gift is an initiation device. The correct response to initiation is to stay inside the ritual and trust that the next move is theirs. Tripwire 9. The final introduction. 8 months into the relationship, the principal calls. I want you to meet someone. That is the entire message. No context. No agenda. No warning about who or why. You say yes. You show up at a private club on a Thursday at 7 p.m. The person you're introduced to turns out to be someone whose public identity is one thing and whose actual occupation is another. The entire conversation is in code. You are being observed for whether you can operate inside ambiguity without demanding it resolve. If at any point you ask, what is this about, or what do you actually do, you are quietly and permanently demoted back to the outer ring. The correct move is to be interested, precise, useful, and incurious about structure. You earn the next invitation by proving that you do not require the current one to be explained. Once you have passed the final introduction, you are no longer being tested, you are being used. And being used at this level is the compliment. Nobody uses a liability. Here is the dark part. The filter is not cruel. The filter is efficient. At the level of generational wealth, the downside of admitting 1 wrong person vastly exceeds the upside of admitting 1 right person. A liability in the inner circle can erase a foundation, unwind a trust, leak a deal, humiliate a family publicly, or trigger a regulator. An asset simply adds marginal value. The math is asymmetric, and therefore the filter is defensive by design. What looks like cruelty from the outside is actually cold cost-benefit. Every generation spends years training the next generation on this filter, not because the patriarchs are snobs, but because they have watched what happens to families that forget. The Habsburgs forgot. The Medicis forgot. Every dynastic family that does not enforce the filter eventually gets eaten by one of the people they admitted on charisma alone. So they filter, ruthlessly, and they filter you even if you do not know you're being filtered. Especially then, the filter does not hate you. It protects what it is guarding. And what it is guarding was not yours to begin with. So what do you do with all this? First, stop misreading your exclusion. The door did not close because you were not impressive enough. It closed because at some point in some moment, you volunteered something you did not need to volunteer, or asked for something you did not need to ask for, or performed for someone who was not watching you perform. That is it. Nothing personal. Nothing cosmic. A tripwire triggered, and the math ran. Second, recognize that entry into the system is almost never the correct goal for most humans, including most readers of this video. The cost of staying inside is continuous discretion, continuous availability, continuous curation, and continuous performance of a version of yourself that cannot crack. That cost is very real, and for most people it is not worth what is on the other side of the door. Third, understand that many of these principles, discretion, silence, low maintenance favors, respect for staff, and curious competence, are transferable to every part of life. You can practice them in your own circle without anybody above you ever needing to know. And ironically, practicing them is the one reliable way the door quietly opens anyway, if that is ever what you actually want. 12 invisible tripwires. 9 scenes. 1 filter that decides who stays inside the next room. You are probably being tested at a dinner this month. You will not be told you are being tested. That is the point. You just learned the 12 tripwires. Use them, or do not. Which tripwire have you already failed without knowing? Be honest. Como bilo? I read every single one. The next dinner is a Tuesday somewhere in the city. Someone is already judging the length of your pause.